Hi everyone, it's Liz here from Agency Analytics. Welcome to our Why You Should Stay Remote Insights from an Agency Owner webinar. We're going to get started in about a minute or so. Just wanted to give our audience a moment to join, get set up, get comfortable, maybe grab a cup of coffee if they need to, and then we're going to get started. Just a note, also if you're worried about missing anything from today, we'll be emailing a copy of this webinar to everyone after the event concludes. So stay tuned and we'll be kicking things off in just a moment. All right, welcome and thanks for joining us today on Why You Should Stay Remote, Insights from an Agency Owner. I'm Liz Gobin. I'm going to be your host for today. As we go through the content and some of the content today, I just wanted to mention if you have any questions or comments or anything that you want clarification on as we go through, some of the reasons and the content of this webinar, feel free to drop them into the chat or the questions section. And towards the end of the webinar, we will get to them and do our best to respond to as many as we can. So with that, I guess the question really is, should you stay remote? There's a lot of agencies right now with the vaccine news and with some of the changes. Last year we saw a shift in the work environment that caused many businesses and agencies to pivot from an in-person business and in-person in office to working completely remote. And so, it's been a while. We've come a long way. It's been lapsed a year now. I think we're at the point where a lot of people are starting to assess whether they should in fact return to the office or actually transition their teams into working remotely on a permanent basis. And it's a decision to make, but it's a decision that agency owners and entrepreneurs and business owners want to make with confidence. So, we've definitely seen some pros and cons for in favor and against either option. But actually, today we're going to focus on why you should stay remote. What are the advantages and benefits of running a remote agency? And if you were to elect to transition to working remotely permanently, how do you optimize your business? How do you support your team? How do you continue to grow and expand your agency in the most efficient way? So with that, let's get into things. I'm going to introduce our two speakers for today, and then we will start rolling into some of the content. So joining me today and to kick things off is our special guest speaker, Jordan Snyder. He's the CTO and co-founder of Token Creative Services. He's going to be sharing his insights and his experiences on the advantages of leading a remote agency. Also joining us here is Alex Girardi. Alex is going to be taking us through a little bit more of the evidence and some of the data surrounding the pros of converting and running a remote agency and the efficiencies and how you can actually put that all together, building off of what Jordan's going to talk to us about and really just getting a little bit more into the data sets of that. So with that, I do want to start off by saying welcome, Jordan. We're so happy to have you here today. Tell us a little bit about you and your business.
Hey, Liz. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. So I'm the Chief Technology Officer and co-founder of Token Creative Services. And we like to call ourselves like an impact agency. So we are a full service B2B business that focuses ultimately on creative solutions. So we're like a creative agency more so than anything. We really like collaborating with innovative brands, making a positive environmental or social change in the world, hence the word impact. We're a pretty small but mighty team. I think we've got about 20 creative people on the team so far, ranging from animators, photographers, designers, developers, even to advertisers. So we really run the full gamut of B2B services here at Token. And we like to think of ourselves as storytellers. We like to take the brands that we work with and, find awesome ways just to get their name out there in the world.
That's so great. You know what? I'm actually going to ask you a little bit about your story. So how did you get started as an agency and, how did you just decide to run your agency and what was really your ambition in starting things up?
That's actually a really good question. So my co-founder and I, Mohsen, when we started Token Creative Services, We as individuals had noticed that, there were a lot of amazing people around us, like incredibly talented designers, developers, people doing their own things almost in a freelance sort of sense. And it was amazing. And we thought to ourselves, how cool would it be if we could build a whole business around the idea of just, finding these amazingly talented people in the world and just enabling them to do what they love, which in a lot of senses helping people like designers and developers who maybe don't have the best entrepreneurial spirit themselves, or maybe they just hate sales. We try to give them an environment that says, hey, you can do your best work here. We'll get you the work, we'll give you the creative outlet, and you can just do what you love.
I love that. It's so great. I think that's really essential to running a successful business right now is just having the right environment where, your team can grow, can truly be themselves and be creative in the best way possible. So I'm really happy to hear, you have that environment set up and you've definitely proven successful in that realm. So I want to talk about, some of your things about working remotely. Has Token Creative Services always worked remote?
Yeah, we actually have. And so, granted, we're only a business about 7 years old now, I'd say. I think because of that, we were considerably more fortunate than a lot of other businesses this year. I mean, to be completely honest, we were founded on the principle of like remote, flexible, online learning. Like pre-pandemic, that was really cool to do, right? Like everybody wanted to work remotely because it was almost like an intangible thing. Pre-pandemic, we even had a few people who considered themselves digital nomads, somebody on our marketing team. And, he was always really awesome to work with, because no matter where he was in the world, he was always connected with us anyways. And from day one, we've sort of been all into the cloud, so to speak. But despite that, being a creative agency, I mean, not being able to get to each other in person has been pretty tough. Like we're a creative agency, we spend most of our time in team meetings, like reviewing mock-ups, creating new brand messaging, strategizing stuff for campaigns. And we had like the coolest office space to do it, like whiteboard wall, whiteboard tabletops, like sticky notes everywhere. It was cool, right? Like it was a thing of beauty to come into and see all of your peers in a room doing their best work, just getting creative with stuff. It was fun and spontaneous and inspiring. And you wanted to go to the office. And the best part is when a client came into the office, you got what you wanted from them, and you ultimately helped them feel excited about it. And I mean, March 2021, 2020, I think it's been almost a year since all of this has happened. And I think no matter what's happened, even though you want to work remotely, I think there's an element of you will always want to have a little bit of that human interaction.
Absolutely, I completely agree. There's definitely pros and cons to both, but it was interesting that you guys started off your agency with that remote environment in mind and enabling all those creative assets from the get-go. Um, can you talk a little bit about how being remote has actually benefited your agency in a positive way? How have you enabled your team to be able to still continue those creative juices or still continue to like take what they would have done on a white table or a whiteboard in a room or a client meeting and bring that into a remote or a virtual environment?
Yeah, that's another really good question. And I think maybe as the CTO, this is probably going to be a little bit of a selfish answer. But like as a guy who's thinking about our technology and tools, I'm always looking to improve those or to find something that, we can employ across the business to help the team grow. And of course, there's always going to be people who are more receptive to technology and change than others. And honestly, in some cases, I would end up almost arguing with some of our non-technical users for really simple things like, them refusing to digitize their notes from a paper sales meeting they had, or, people just not really collaborating in our project management tools like we needed them to. And like, I think what was kind of nice about this pandemic was that this really forced a lot of people to start using these tools and being better about being online. Mainly because they were forced to, but ultimately, I think it was for the better. By going people online, we saw, better increase in adoption of all of our organizational tools. There was better communication, more documentation, more resource availability. And I think I credit all of that because the team was actually using the tools to their fullest potentials. And as a business owner, it is a truly beautiful thing to see all of your little business tools, like a business technology stack, if you will, all tightly integrated, all communicating, being leveraged the right way they should. It's great. And I think simply because we saw better adoption in our tools, I honestly think that being in a remote environment really made project management easier and team management just overall easier for us. And I think it's a bit of a two-handed thing as well. By virtue of having better tools and technology for the team, we were able to close that creative brainstorming gap that we had. Post-pandemic, I was still feeling a need that I had to try to promote that creative environment, that in-office experience that I was explaining earlier, because I wanted to help people feel excited. I needed them to feel engaged. I wanted them to feel, supportive, that they can go into an environment where candor is a thing and free-flowing collaboration and expression should be important as a part of that process. And I think, people just need to feel in their element. And it came back to the same thing. By providing the team with better tools and resources, they started to explore their remote working for themselves. Some people in the team are always going to handle the scenarios better than others. My sales team, who might consider themselves like extroverts, went into full-blown panic mode when this all happened. And then people who maybe say were like my developers, people that are more introverted, loved it. They got straight into some Dungeons and Dragons groups and completely rolled with the punches. So I think, being in a remote environment really helped us refine our ability to be creative virtually, which is our single differentiating factor as a business. So coming out of this year, we actually saw, a lot of positive change for us because of that.
That's so great. A lot of good points there, a lot of great feedback. I love that you've just created that environment and taken, this space and really looked at the team as a landscape and saying, okay, how do we make sure that the team is engaged? How do we make sure that the different levels of comfortability of technology I think that was a big hurdle that many people faced is that we have a lot of different demographics. We have a lot of different personality types, and not all of them are comfortable with technology. Not all of them are comfortable with using, different channels, different Slack groups. I throw Slack
Yeah.
out there, but different ways of communication in the virtual environment where they've been used to maybe a certain way of communicating or a certain way of working for so long. So I want to know, for some of the agencies and for the audience that's listening today, if they're really struggling with some of those things, like for example, how to make their team more comfortable, or how to get to the point that you've achieved, and really bringing that creativity and really bringing that unison, so that if you have multiple people working on a campaign or together, or you have multiple people working on client project, what are some tips that you can actually offer them to maybe help them along the way to say, here's what we did and here's how we saw success? What would you say to them to, help overcome some of the challenges that they might currently be facing?
So I'd say for me, one of the easiest examples that I would have to give here is lead by example. That, anytime you go into maybe a new business or a new work environment, everybody's got their own way of doing things. Some people use certain project management tools, some people use certain chat tools, but a lot of people, a lot of the non-technical users, they don't even know what is within the art of the possible. They don't realize that a cool tool might have this feature where you can mark things as dependent and have like an approval process in them. And, I think you as a leader need to be able to set the precedent to say, let me set up this tool for you once, or let me give you a demo of the best case scenario. If you can give them a target or what to work towards, or maybe the why behind it, I think it's one thing to tell somebody just to digitize their notes, but it's another to hit the point home that says, tell me exactly what happened in your sales meeting 12 months ago on this day, or something to that extent, right? You really have to show them why the value, or what the value is, and why they should be using these tools. And through that, I think they'll be inspired to pursue that on their own then.
Absolutely, I agree. And I think training is also really a big, important aspect too. If you are to
Yeah.
go down the avenue of launching a new tool, making sure that the team is on board with how your organization uses it, what the best practices are, and just making sure that the team feels comfortable. Because I think that, it's hard when you're remote to try to communicate to your team members, this is a really frustrating thing. How do I do this? And there's a lot of fear of asking questions, when people are not so comfortable and everybody else around them is. So I think that's really important and I'm so happy that, your organization has provided an environment where your team members feel comfortable doing that. So that's a really good thing to do. So I also want to ask, knowing what you know now, and having experienced, managing a remote environment for the last 7 years, if you could go back into the past and talk to that person that started your agency, yourself in the past, what advice would you give yourself for starting your business off and managing a remote team?
Oh, that's a good question. Gosh. I think a lot of business owners, especially in today's day and age, there's a lot of uncertainty. So I think one of the best pieces of advice that I would give is be confident and just do your research. The more research, the more planning that you do ahead of something, to a degree, will only arm you in the long run with what you go down. Especially as you think about how to run a team or how to run a business, really try to think about the semantics and the political nature of what that kind of thing would mean. Um, and I think to a larger degree, a lot of us, especially with the pandemic, we all felt, very helpless. The new normal was scary, but I don't think the new normal has to be bad. And I think that a lot of us in the digital space feel confident there. And I think that, when you build your team, build it with the people that you want to kind of have on your staff. Bring the right people on that can feel confident with digital tools, that maybe have experience in what you're working on. Because at the end of the day, your greatest weapon is the tools that you pick. Optionally going with the cheaper tools or something free is going to have its costs. So pick the right tool and make your life easier, enable your team, and ultimately show them through regularity and persistence what the art of the possible is.
Mm-hmm. That's really great. Great advice. Is there anything else that you want to add or communicate to our audience that's really trying to decide right now whether they should go back to the office or they should really just transition their team remotely?
I'd honestly have to say that remote for us has been a blessing. And that I think sometimes we forget that it used to be a very cool thing to work remotely, to have that flexible life. And it seems like all of a sudden, when everybody got that, it wasn't what they wanted to do. But for people like us stuck in the pandemic, getting involved in business, anything like that, I think the most important thing is just human connection, feeling connected, whether you're in a creative shop or whether you just want to be friends. People want to feel like they're a part of something. They're a part of a group, an outing, an event, a business that they believe in. People are missing that human connection. And so I would encourage all business owners out there to spend some time and invest in social culture with your team, especially outside of those working hours. Spend physical, virtual time with your team outside of those work hours. Help people de-stress, bring the team together, even call it team building, whatever you want to do. We host game nights, we do virtual lunches. We'll pay for people that buy a game so we can all play together. And I think that has been the single biggest impactful thing that we have done. And sometimes that social culture is something that we often overlook, but we're all stuck at home. We're all working so much. I think we want to feel like we have that human connection again.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I completely agree. And I hope that our audience agrees as well. I think that you've provided some really great tips. And, I really appreciate you sharing your journey with us as a remote agency. I think you have a lot of really great beliefs and a lot of really great values. So I think this was really beneficial, and I hope that our audience does as well. If anyone on the call today has any questions for Jordan, he will be sticking around for the Q&A section towards the end. So feel free to ask him a little bit more if you want to know a little bit more about what tools he uses, or really how his journey came about, and how he found success in some of the things that he's done. So thank you so much for that, Jordan. That was really great.
Thanks, Liz.
Awesome. At this point, I'm actually going to hand over the reins to Alex Girardi, who's going to continue to provide more evidence and information on, what Jordan talked about, some of the aspects there, the compelling reasons for working remote, and some data around, how that's going to work.
Yeah, thanks, Liz, and thanks to Jordan as well for jumping in here. A little bit of history between me and Jordan. I used to be his director of digital marketing over at Token, so I could definitely attest to how they run their agency and it being very efficient while being remote. And having come over here to AgencyAnalytics, I'm hoping I can impart some wisdom onto you guys today, drawing on that experience from that time at Token. Helping to grow that team, and then transitioning over here where we're also fully remote. So, I'm going to jump back into the picture here and let's just reiterate some of what Liz said previously. We're gonna have a little Q&A session at the end. Any questions along the way, just type them into chat so you don't forget them. Our colleague Peter will be monitoring the chat, so he'll answer you, and then we'll take a little bit of time at the end to answer some of your questions. Jordan will be around, so yeah, he'll be able to answer some of those too. You guys will be sent a video recording of this webinar for your reference, and anyone who wasn't able to attend it and wants to see it will also be sent this recording. So if you're watching this in the future, thank you for watching this. And then we're going to have a little short feedback survey we're going to send you regarding this webinar. So any feedback you have, any suggestions, anything you want to see in the future, be sure to submit it there, and you'll probably see some of your content coming back at you in future webinars. So yeah, let's just dive right into the benefits of remote work. Some of the stats and the data, this is kind of based around North America, looking at employers. So how do employers benefit if their employees work for even half the week from home? That's only 2.5 days of the week, half day Wednesday and then Thursday, Friday, or however they want to break it up. But they report that they see a saving of $11,000 on average per employee who works at home for half of the week. This is, they see an increase in productivity. Operations they're not spending as much on. They don't need to put as much time into keeping their employees because people want to work from home and their happiness is generally higher. Real estate, you don't need as much office space, and they don't take as many sick days. We'll get into that a little bit later as well. And there's no transit subsidies, so no stipends for travel, no bike to work schemes, that kind of stuff. So they're saving an average of $11,000 per year per employee. They've reported that they see an increase of 15% in productivity. And, while that doesn't maybe not save you money, it makes you more money. And, that's always a bonus. And a decrease in absenteeism is seen by a 15% drop. Now, that could be for a number of reasons. People are taking less sick days. If they have an appointment or an errand they need to run, if they are working from the office, they might see the need to take a full day off for that, and they might take a sick day. But for working at home, gives them the flexibility to be able to do that, go to that appointment, run that errand, and then come back and can continue and finish the work that they were doing. And they don't need to take an absent day for that. They also will be less stressed working from home. No commute, no stressful days in the office, and they may need to take less mental health days. Employers also see a 25% reduction on office costs, and I think that speaks for itself. You don't need to buy computers, buy laptops. Again, we're looking at if people work for half the week, but if they work for the full week from home, you don't need to buy them laptops. They generally have their own. You don't need to pay for their food and snacks in their own kitchen. So you're definitely saving on office costs there. Now, how do employees save? Employees always wanted to work from home, is that coveted thing. And then when COVID came, it kind of became it became the mandatory thing. So maybe some of the glitz and glamour is gone, but it's still fantastic to work from home and have your own freedom like that. In addition, they save 11.5 days per year just from commuting, stuck in traffic, on public transport. And that's huge for productivity. That's huge for their own mental health. That's huge for just, getting that time back in their lives, and then getting money back in their lives too. That they're spending between $2,500 to $4,000 less on travel. That's no gas, no public transport, and that can go towards, per year, paying off your mortgage, paying off loans, taking a family holiday, whatever it may be. But it just gives you that nice, kind of pocket money back that you wouldn't otherwise have if you're working from the office. And the earth, we all benefit from, reducing the amount of time we spend in cars with CO2 emissions, etc. And the earth would see an average of 100,000 less gallons of gas used per year. And then 2 million less miles traveled cumulatively in North America. And, that would cut costs such as CO2 emissions. It would, cut money. It would pretty much cut everything. And it would have a huge benefit on the earth. And we've seen great success here at Agency Analytics working remotely. All of those things that I just mentioned, plus more. But how do we do it? How do we keep ourselves aligned? How do we keep ourselves motivated? And how do we communicate? So we have certain tools, like Jordan was talking about. You need this stack of tools which will enable your employees and your kind of higher ups to continuously communicate throughout the day. So we use ClickUp for our project management tool. Similar ones, Asana, Trello, I've used them both. They're all great. We use ClickUp here at AgencyAnalytics. It provides great collaborative features such as, chats. You can have automation set up there, docs, so you can document your important processes or procedures. Then, Slack is the classic for communication, for chatting. It's kind of, we use it here. We have channels set up for, marketing, customer success. We have a general one for kind of fun stuff. We have a team one for team announcements. And yeah, it just really helps us keep all aligned. When it's not maybe a project related question that we have, just a general one, we'll head over and we'll message the relevant person in Slack, and it's immediate, the response. And then Zoom, Zoom has let us take all our meetings online. I was watching another webinar actually by Calendly the other day, and they said that 45 minutes is becoming the new hour for meetings, and even 30 minutes is becoming the new 45 minutes. So we're getting a ton of time back in our lives, because like Zoom fatigue is a thing. We don't like to spend a lot of time on Zoom, just kind of staring at the screen. So we're cutting our meetings shorter and shorter, and even I've seen like 25 minutes, and just having that 5 minutes between the end of your meeting and maybe the beginning of your next one is huge, just to be able to settle and let all the information kind of lie and let it lie well with you. So we use those three mainly here at AgencyAnalytics for communication. When we get to data organization, there's obviously a ton of data that informs our business decisions, how we work, what we do, and we use HubSpot as a CRM. It's closely kind of linked with Intercom for our customer support side, but HubSpot is where all our customer data is housed, and it's how we kind of manage the plans, all that kind of stuff. And then for data, we actually use our own platform for our data analytics to track how our marketing is going, to track our successes, track any gaps that we see that we could be hitting that we're not. So we actually use our own platform. And if you guys probably use this for your clients, but maybe you don't use it for yourself in-house. So, reach out to us. We'll be happy to help you get set up with your own kind of in-house reporting system for your own successes, your own marketing, your own sales, all that kind of stuff. And Humi is our HR app. Our Approver, our HR coordinator, will use that to manage our days off. I've used it to book some holidays, and it's super easy. And it's used for payroll too. So having all these systems in place which allow you to manage your team wherever they are in the world is key. We have a great culture here at AgencyAnalytics, and this is all done through the tools that I mentioned above. But essentially, we want to keep a good atmosphere. We're a growing team, and I find that every time we add a new person, they fit in seamlessly, and that's because of the communication that we have going on. Every Friday we have a happy hour. And we just get together. It's not even a rule that we don't talk about work, but we just don't talk about work during happy hour. We talk about other things that the team is interested in. Investing is always a really big topic. Sometimes, again, Approver, our HR coordinator, she will set up quizzes or games that we can play together. Then we'll have things like parties to celebrate Halloween, Christmas, and fun events. You can see a little Halloween screenshot there where we all dressed up, and yeah, it was great. And then you'll see on the right, that's kind of a physical meetup before COVID, and we sometimes have those, where there's a cluster of employees. We have a lot of people in Toronto, so when we can all gather and meet outside again, the guys in Toronto might go for a little kickabout or something like that in a park and just meet up. And pre-COVID, we would take kind of team trips. I think that picture maybe is from Las Vegas, I'm not too sure, but they would take team trips just to get to know each other personally, meet up, have some fun, just increase the team bonding. And another thing we do is we give Employee of the Month awards, and that's huge because being a remote team, I don't always see what's going on in the engineering department, for example. But if an engineer gets recognized 1 month, I'll know that he's making a great contribution to the team, and it's just great for transparency, great for visibility, and it really increases employee morale. It's always really nice to see whoever wins the award each month. We all give them like a little Zoom clap, which is always a very silent thing and looks a little bit strange, but the employee is always really appreciated. And having all these tools in place, having all these people has, you can see there by the map where we've grown worldwide. We have people in Canada, Spain, France, India, Indonesia, Philippines, and Vietnam. And it allows us, our customer support to have 24/5 coverage for support. And it just works all so seamlessly. I can chat with our graphic designer in India and collaborate on a piece of work, and it's done within hours. There's really no lag time as it goes to working remotely from different countries, and it has enabled us to have over 30 employees in 7 countries and growing. We're adding people all the time. These are some people we added in 2020. I think so far in 2021 we've probably added 4, 5, or 6 people. So being remote doesn't mean your team can't grow and have a really good culture. And I think we do a really good job here at AgencyAnalytics of setting that standard. But it begs the question, how do you manage your growth? How do you manage your team when you stay remote? How do you keep on top of what everyone's doing? And drawing on my experience from Token, I noticed there was one key metric that really helped us to do that, and that was agency utilization. So the agency utilization rate it's the amount of time one of your employees spends on client-facing tasks versus the total contracted hours. So you can see a little formula there to work it out. It's their hours worked divided by total hours over 100. Sorry, multiplied by 100. And a successful agency will typically report between 85 to 90% utilization rate. Now, why is it important? So if you're tracking your employees' time and you see that the utilization is too high, maybe they're at 100, 105%, they're at risk of facing burnout. It can lead to rushed work, which could mean poor work. It doesn't mean they're bad workers, but they just have too much on their plate. And it's up to you as the employer, as a manager, to be able to manage that, take something off their plate and let them work efficiently and how they want to. It's also not leaving them time for internal matters like, meetings, focusing on your own marketing and sales, or even to attend happy hour. You want to give them that time during the week to be able to take time to chat with their colleagues, to attend a happy hour, play the quizzes, just give them time. And if they're working at 100 or even over capacity, then they're not going to have fun, and their motivation will dip. Too low utilization isn't great either. You want to hit that sweet spot, because low utilization means that your employees have too much free time. Maybe they're not fulfilled in their jobs. They're kind of bored twiddling their thumbs throughout the day. It's wasted money for you as the employer. So it means that you might have room to take on more clients. You could focus their resources on getting more clients, or refocus resources from someone else who is over capacity to that employee who's underutilized. And it might lead to poor work quality if they're not motivated in their job. You might see a little drop, but again, it doesn't mean they're bad at what they do. It just means that they're not being used to their full potential. And just to kind of reiterate this point, it's definitely not about Big Brother. It's not about tracking what people do in their homes. It's about efficiency rather than monitoring. And I think, when I was tracking my time at Token, I found it really useful, a really good insight to know how much time I'm spending on one client versus another. And I was able to prioritize then. In tracking time, it allows you to kind of pivot where you're focusing, pivot what client you're spending a lot of time on and what client you're not giving enough time to. You can optimize that way, and it allows for growth because you can see the gaps. You can see where people are kind of not so busy when they could be busier. You can see what client isn't getting enough time to their account. So, time tracking, it's not about seeing what people are doing. It's really about, increasing efficiency for the client and for yourself too. Some useful tools that we like: Rescue Time, Clockify, Toggle, even manually with Google Sheets. I know Asana and ClickUp have time tracking features that you can track per task, really useful. But if you have a spreadsheet in Google Sheets, I have a little demo here that I can show you. I set up a little Sheets and AgencyAnalytics dashboard. So I'll just jump over here, and you can see we have a little, really quick graphy. You can see who's being utilized, who's not being utilized. And then this is just a graph that's pulled from a Google Sheet. And our customer success actually did a webinar last month on how you can use Google Sheets with AgencyAnalytics. So if you want to know how to set this up, definitely check that webinar out. It has some great info on a lot of stuff you can do with the Google Sheets integration for AgencyAnalytics. Here we have a little table, but all of this info is being pulled from this Google Sheet right here. Now you can edit it. You can edit this sheet and it'll update, once you refresh your page, it'll update. But essentially, I have the employee name, I have their job title, how many hours they should work per week, how many client-facing hours they have, and this is their utilization rate right here. Some ideas, some notes are good here because, Luna only has a 25% utilization rate, but she's a marketing manager and it's necessary for her to keep focusing on internal matters to keep the team ticking. And you maybe don't want to make her focus on client-facing tasks because she needs to keep this team ticking over. But then Crindle, he's at 105%. He's going to burn out soon. You need to kind of look down the queue, see who's not working as much. Ernest, maybe he can take some of Crindle's work. Maybe you can hire a new person if Crindle shouldn't be working fully on client-facing tasks. It just gives you this great overview, especially here, really quick overview of how much people are working, and yeah, where you can optimize. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Let's just jump back over onto this presentation. Yeah, we're pretty much done. Time for the Q&A. Any questions you have, post them in chat, and yeah, we'll answer them. So I'll welcome Liz and Jordan back now, and we'll answer any questions that you have.
Thanks so much, Alex. That was really great, and thanks for taking us through all of that information. As Alex mentioned, at this time, we're actually going to transition into the Q&A section. So if you have any questions or comments about anything discussed or presented today, feel free to drop them in the chat or into the questions section now. I think we actually did have a few rolling in while the content was being delivered. So, let's get to a few of them. There was the question, I think this one is for Jordan. Great topic, Jordan. What tools are you using in your agency to facilitate remote work?
Oh, yeah, of course. So my team and I really love the Google productivity tools. So we're all in for Google Workspace. So naturally, Google Chat, Google Meet. We like Asana, Calendly for scheduling. We like PandaDoc for all of our signatures agreements. And of course, anything to do with reporting and data. We rely heavily on AgencyAnalytics.
Awesome. There's another question here. If hiring someone new remotely, if you were never to meet in person, so this might be for, either Alex or Jordan, how do you know if this person is going to be a good fit?
Yeah, it's really about, it's definitely hard to say, but I would say vibes, if you like using that word, in your interview, in your meeting, you kind of get a sense for if the person's going to fit in with your current culture. I've applied for some jobs that say they don't look for culture fit, they look for culture add. So someone who's going to add something to the culture of our company, could be a good route to go. But it's really about whether you and the person get along in the interview, and it's not just kind of a Q&A type thing.
Yeah, that's a really great tip. And I think something else that, I noticed too, really, it's just having that, how well you converse with the other person, how you're able to connect with them. Do you see them being a part of your team, and maybe looking at your team landscape and your culture and asking the question, does this person, would they fit? Would they get along with the team? Does their expertise really mesh well with the other talents of the rest of the agency? So that was a great question. Thanks for that. Do you use time tracking software? So maybe this is more for Jordan.
I mean, we use a couple different time tracking tools, but we try to be careful with that because it's not about, did you do your work today? It's ultimately just trying to understand where we're spending our time and whether we're budgeting correctly. So for that reason, we ask our team to time track pretty diligently. And we use, I think, Clockify typically for that. We like the integration that it has with some of our project management tools.
Perfect. And I think, Alex, you had mentioned some of the tools in one of your slides. Do you mind just reiterating some of them?
Yeah, there was Clockify, Rescue Time as well. There's the Google Sheets integration if you track it manually. A couple of the productivity tools. So Asana gives you the option to track time based on what task you're working on. Um, yeah, I think ClickUp does that too. So Clockify, I've used Clockify in the past, and it's pretty good, pretty robust, and like Jordan says, it has some cool integrations with some other platforms. But if you use a project management tool currently, maybe do a bit of research. They might have a native time tracking tool as well.
Perfect. So this question is for Jordan. Jordan, how do you find the challenge of integrating new team members remotely into your company culture and making them feel a part of something? I know you alluded to a little bit of that, but are you able to expand a little bit more on the culture piece and, specifically what you've done at Token Creative Services to help enhance, that unison between your team members?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's always going to be a little bit of a challenge to introduce new team members. It's a matter of showing them your work culture, but also making them feel included. I think somebody had put something in the chat there. I think Curtis there had said, it's all about asking the right questions during the interview process. And I think it's important because I think that sets the stage for having the right type of culture fit with these teams. Assuming you've validated that culture fit at a really high level, I think it's just, spending the time with the team, whether it be one-on-one training or, like I had said, having that social event. I think if you can make them feel included both in the work and in the fun space, I think it's an easier conversation.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So we have some other comments here from Ian. Hey, we're a small team of 6. At the moment, we do just one group meeting each Friday. We're in contact via WhatsApp, Asana, and the other days. Can you, either of you, Alex or Jordan, talk a little bit about, how during the week you actually come back and forth between the team members and keep that conversation going, maybe within the tools that you use or making the most out of the tools via touch points or meetings? What are some of the ways that, you ensure that day to day those operations do continue?
Yeah, so some of the tools we use would be Zoom for our meetings, which I think Ian a little further down said, should we do daily meets? We don't do daily meets, we do weekly, but every other day of the week we're connected through Slack, and we have different channels set up there. We will have other meetings during the week, like marketing meetings or marketing and sales, but they're not daily. They're kind of on a weekly basis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I know that my team typically meet daily only because we're a Scrum Agile type of shop. So, the way we work on projects is pretty conducive just to keeping touch bases often.
Mm-hmm, for sure. Perfect. It looks like the majority of the questions we got through. Hopefully I didn't miss anything here. If there's any other questions, obviously feel free to reach out. I did want to say, thanks again for everyone that joined us today. Special thanks to Jordan from Token Creative Services for being our guest speaker, and for Alex Girardi at Agency Analytics for sharing their story and their insights with us. As we mentioned, we're going to be sharing a copy of this recording. So if you ended up jumping on a little bit late at the beginning or the offset, don't worry. We will definitely share the full recording with you. And I also did want to mention, we'd love your feedback if you're willing to provide it. We'll be sending a survey link out. If you have a moment, would love to get your feedback and appreciate you just sharing your thoughts so that we can continue to deliver what's important to you. And as I mentioned, if there are any other additional questions, don't hesitate to reach out directly to us, either in the forum or with the follow-up message. And with that, I think that is all of the content for today. Thanks everyone for joining once again, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day.